Police in Malawi have confirmed that they've arrested the leader of Enlightened Christian Gathering Church, Shepherd Bushiri, and his wife Mary. Well, what happens now that another warrant of arrest has been issued for them, or if they are granted bail in Malawi? We're joined by Immigration Attorney Ashraf Essop, and hopefully also being part of this conversation will be Criminal and Defense Attorney Tyrone Maseko. Ashraf, let me begin with you, and again, thank you so much for your time tonight. What is the likely scenario that could play itself out now that the Bushiris are in custody in Malawi?
Well, in terms of the Interpol arrest warrant, they were on the so-called travel ban list. Now, it depends on the domestic laws of Malawi. These are first and foremost Malawian citizens. And that court or that jurisdiction has to decide what they charged with. I can't understand that they would have been charged with a crime in Malawi because that would have been publicized. I can only guess that they have been granted bail in Malawi in respect of the Interpol Red Alert. Now, the Interpol Red Alert cannot also continue for more than 6 months in certain jurisdictions. So in terms of international law, especially with Interpol arrest warrants, and depending on the domestic law of that particular jurisdiction, they are to be brought to court as soon as possible. Now, without really knowing what the charges are in Malawi, and number two, why bail was granted, it's impossible to try and second guess what's happening in that jurisdiction. What is very clear is in South Africa's jurisdiction, they were suspects and then they became accused in a criminal case, and they were granted bail after a protracted, let's say, bail application, an opposed bail application, wherein they drew the onus of proving to the court that they had exceptional circumstances for bail to be granted. So at this stage, it would be very, very premature to try and guess why they were granted bail in Malawi, and if indeed they're facing other charges in Malawi that we're not aware of. But certainly, one can't transplant our jurisdiction, our criminal justice jurisdiction, into Malawi and ask the Malawi courts now to determine bail. Remember, they were granted bail in South Africa. So why would they be granted bail back in their country of origin? Can only mean, logically, that either they've been charged under some new legislation or some new charges in Malawi, alternatively within the boundaries of the Interpol arrest.
So let's talk about this Interpol Red Alert then, and what it actually does for this process. Ultimately, does it mean that, what does it do in terms of trying to get them back to South Africa?
Okay, so Interpol is not a law enforcement agency. It has no jurisdiction over anyone. It is a collective of agencies, or it's by agreement that Interpol, which really stood for International Police, of which our late Commissioner Jackie Celebi was one time the head of, really is there for cooperation between nation states so that fugitives or people fleeing from justice or committing some kind of crime are placed on an international list. And in the event that that person is found within their jurisdiction, certain things will happen. So Interpol is not the prosecutional authority, nor can it determine bail, nor can it do any of those things. Hence I'm saying it's a complete mystery without knowing the facts on what basis the Bushiris were now granted bail in their country of origin.
Tyrone Maseko, you are a criminal defense attorney, and, you know, I suppose in many respects we're going to ask you to role play a little bit and put yourself in the shoes of being possibly Shepherd Bushiri's lawyers and the kind of advice that he is receiving. We were told that Malawian officials had gone to his home last night in pursuit of him and his wife to arrest them. We don't know what charges exactly they would have been arrested on. They didn't find them, and they handed themselves in or over to authorities today. Do you think they would have done that on the advice of their lawyers? All right, it seems like we've lost that Skype connection there to Tyrone Maseko. And Ashraf, maybe let me also just ask you a question within the same frame. The fact that you're saying Interpol wouldn't necessarily have played a role in their arrest. So what kind of charges would they need to face? Would they need to be similar to what to the charges that they're facing in South Africa, or would Interpol be looking for them just under the umbrella of them being fugitives and needing to be brought back into the country?
That's a possibility. Remember what I said, that Interpol itself doesn't have jurisdiction. So let's assume South Africa has now placed this responsibility on Interpol and said, look, in terms of our bail application, our laws, they have now broken their bail conditions and left the country, which is one of the conditions attached there. The other condition that we can't really prejudge is the warrant for arrest, which has not yet been issued. The warrant can only be issued if on the day of the return date, as we know, as we say, the accused failed to appear before the court. Now, let's assume the accused fails to appear before the court, and his attorney or his counsel puts to the court that my client is sick and is unable to attend, and he hands up a medical certificate. At that stage, the magistrate or the judge will take it in and will issue a warrant of arrest pending a further inquiry into whether there was really an illness or not. So again, it's premature for us to say, A, their bail has been mistreated, B, that they have now they've broken their bail. We know they've broken one of the bail conditions, and we don't know what the court will react to that. But certainly, from my perspective, it will be very strange to find that a crime committed in South Africa is now being charged for in Lesotho, unless there was cross or extraterritorial crimes committed between the two countries. Let me give an example. You recall the World Cup was an event where the FBI had moved against certain World Cup officials who had earned bribes in dollars. And the FBI said, in terms of our jurisdiction, you commit a crime in terms of the dollars, we have extraterritorial jurisdiction. We'll go and fetch you, bring you back to the States, and we'll charge you there. This is exactly what had happened in that case. So perhaps here, and I'm guessing very, very widely, that there could have been extraterritorial transfers of money, which if it went back to Malawi, well, now the Malawian authorities have a case, maybe similar to ours, maybe proceeds of Crime Act, POCA, maybe fraud, maybe money laundering. We really don't know. So it could be that two jurisdictions enjoy the same powers of prosecution for one crime or two crimes committed over certain jurisdictions.
Ashraf, I'm going to ask you just to hold that, just to, in fact, continue there, and maybe let's just look at then what happens on the issue of money laundering, because we know that Shepherd Bushiri is facing money laundering charges in South Africa, and there is an allegation that some of the monies may well have ended up back in Malawi. Would that then have triggered the Malawian authorities to respond to this matter in the way that they have?
As I just mentioned, that could be a possibility. We really don't know, but it looks logical and it sounds like it is an extension of this crime in South Africa, because if he money laundered or he removed the money and he committed fraud, where is the money? Because the state only attached a house worth 5 million and he put up 200,000 rands each in cash. So where's the rest of the million? Had it fled the Republic? Then in that case, was it a crime to import money into Malawi without the necessary authority or paperwork? We really don't know, and we are kept guessing until further information is available. But certainly in terms of South African law, he was entitled to bail.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a complicated matter going forward. Do you think that the Malawian authorities were just under pressure from the South African government as a result of this diplomatic fallout that has come out of the situation?
Look, it's possible. But in terms of the SADC protocol, I think governments have undertaken not to assist criminals within their jurisdiction, irrespective of their nationality. As you know, there are certain ex-South Africans or permanent residence permit holders sitting in Dubai, and our government is unable to convince the UAE government to hand them over or to start extradition processes. But I think in terms of SADC, certainly there is a strong likelihood that you'll have greater cooperation between our government and the foreign government, especially when it comes to crime. Remember now, we don't know what the depth of this crime really is. This is what the initial charges are. And we must be clear, at the stage of bail, you are not yet convicted. You are merely accused of that crime, and you are innocent until proven otherwise. Which brings us to a very difficult task that the state now has, that of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And if the state is unable to do so, well, then that's the end of the matter. But this is a very long haul, this is a very long journey. The question that remains is, are the Bushiris going to come back? I think their return date is tomorrow. If they do, then they have to give an explanation as to why they left the Republic and how they left the Republic. And then if they are present, bail cannot be restricted because they are present, but they might be remanded in custody for having broken bail conditions. Now remember, there's another spike here. The accused are saying that the prosecutional services are too hard on them. Well, really, you have equality of arms. The state has to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. Imagine every accused comes to court and says, oh, the judge is too strong, or the prosecution is too clever for my lawyers. What would he do to the criminal justice system or any other system? You have the right to hire an attorney of your choice. And in your view, it has to be the best person that can do the job.
Sure.
If that person can't do the job, you don't have to have him as an attorney. But you can't complain about the efficiency of the other side.
Attorney Ashraf Essop, let me thank you so much for your time on the show tonight. He is an immigration attorney and really playing out the multiple scenarios that could be at play here. Like he said, with limited information, it's hard to know what exactly is going on and, in fact, how